My victory was finding the support to get back on my feet.
DAV helps veterans of every generation get the benefits they've earned.
I'm a veteran. When I got out, I felt like nowhere was safe.
So veterans can reach victories, great and small.
My victory was finding the help I needed. Thanks to DAV, now I feel like I'm human again.
Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk, and do appreciate you joining us and tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Now, of course, we often bring you a lot of the news and things going on. We do still intend to do that here today, but as we have each and every year since August 3rd of 2019, we do take this moment to remember those victims and, of course, the families and survivors of the attack that happened on our community. So, continuing in that tradition, we begin with the reading of the names of the victims. Andre Anchondo, Jordan Anchondo, Arturo Benavides, Jorge Calvillo Garcia, Guillermo Garcia, Leonardo Campos, Angelina Inglesby, Maria Flores, Raul Flores, Adolfo Cerros Hernandez, Alexander Hoffman, David Johnson, Luis Alfonso Juarez, Maria Legarreta Roth, Maribel Loya Hernandez, Ivan Filiberto Manzo, Gore Irma Marquez, Elsa Mendoza Marquez, Margie Record, Sarah Regalado Montreal, Javier Amir Rodriguez, Teresa Sanchez, and Juan Velasquez. And of course, this year does come with some very important updates that have been happening with the case that this community has been long anticipating. Looking directly here from the release from the Justice Department of the United States of America, Texas man sentenced to 90 consecutive life sentences for 2019 mass shooting at Walmart in El Paso, Texas, killing 23 people and injuring 22 others. Noting that back on February, the person whose name I am not going to speak now pleaded guilty to the 90-count indictment with 45 counts violating the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act and 45 counts of using a firearm during and in relation to crimes of violence, resulting in the deaths of the victims that I read just previously. Also sentenced to 22 counts of hate crime acts that caused bodily injury and involved attempts to kill 22 people injured in the shooting. In addition to the hate crimes, Crucius was sentenced to 45 firearms violations, including 23 counts of using a firearm in a federal crime of violence resulting in death and 22 counts of using a firearm in a federal crime of violence. Make no mistake, this is not me quoting from the release. This was, and the legacy continues to be, an attack on our community. Maybe I misspoke when saying that is the continuing legacy, because the legacy of this, besides, of course, now justice being served, and I do say this very specifically, the person referenced here and his actions, because of them, he will never breathe a free breath of air again in the remainder of his life. And that is the very least minimum amount of justice I think that this situation demands. Now, of course, there is the state trial that is pending. 2024 or 2025 has been said as the potential dates for that. As more news comes out of that, we will, of course, bring it to you here, as we do with all the things, as much as we can, talk about going on and affecting us here in the community of El Paso. But I think that the important and the very much continuing legacy of this event will be, and I hope will continue to be, the resiliency of our region and of the people of it. Because the coming together in all of the different ways that came out of this, whether it was The outpouring of support at the site, or as nearby as people could get near the Cielo Vista Walmart. The continuing events that go on to this day, and I will be reading some of the ones that are still going on or you can still participate in as of today or the rest of this week, put on by the city of El Paso and other organizations, or the recognition of how much this can affect people, even people who were not present, not there for the events, did not even necessarily know someone there, because the magnitude of this is incredibly important. And the way that this community has resolved itself to deal with this speaks volumes. So, some of those things that are continuing going on as part of the commemorations, quoting from the city of El Paso and their posting on this, that there are going to be, through August 5th, the Unite with Light events, various landmarks and buildings illuminated orange in remembrance of August 3rd, including the public art sculpture on I-10 and Airway, the public artwork near the Abraham Chavez Theater, the El Paso International Airport landscaping, walking path, and terminal, the Blue Flame Building, 1 San Jacinto Plaza, and the Texas Department of Transportation bridge lights and arches on I-10. There are also, again, other continuing on events, including El Paso Heals events being put on by Live Active El Paso and the United Way of El Paso, a series of yoga and sound bath sessions. There was also those previously occurring, that is. There also was a blood drive, as well as other remembrance ceremonies going on earlier today. Still going on today, actually having begun just now, there is the Remembrance of August 3rd art display happening until 6 p.m. at the Armijo branch of the El Paso Public Library at 620 East 7th Avenue. Local artists will be having their work continuing on display. The Unite with Lights is going to be happening at 8:30 p.m., where the community encouraged to light porches or windows with orange lights starting at 8:30 p.m. in honor of the victims of the August 3rd shooting. There's also the August 3rd Day of Resilience Ceremony, County of El Paso Healing Garden. That is going to be going on from 6 to 8 p.m. at Escalante Park at 6900 Delta. And with the El Paso County, again, the United Way of El Paso also hosting some of those sessions at 6 p.m. and then more, with including a performance with El Paso Pro Musica at 7 p.m. And all of the sessions taking place in and around the Healing Gardens. And also at 8 p.m., El Paso County officials will honor the 23 victims of the August 3rd mass shooting with a name reading and light beam ceremony, as well as an announcement of the mural artist winners. There is going to be also going on until 6 p.m. today, Memorial Altar co-creation at the El Paso Museum of Art in downtown El Paso. Also, a virtual memorial webpage is set up at www.elpasotexas.gov/August 3rd. So there are a lot of things and a lot of commemorations that are happening on today. But again, this is not something that has been lightly taken or will ever necessarily not affect this community. But again, I hope the continuing legacy, if only in the way that we deal with each other, will be of, again, the resiliency and the way we take care of each other in this community. With that being said, we do have a guest today on this subject. Going to be visiting with Celeste Nevares, Chief of Clinical Services with Emergence Health Network, talking about how days like today can affect individuals in a variety of different ways, and very specifically what services are and continue to be available with that. We will be taking calls later in the show because there are other things going on, and we will continue to update about some of the major things going on, including more of the remembrances and, again, some of those stories about, including, particularly El Paso Inc. has put out about the status of those upcoming legal proceedings. But in the meantime, taking that first break of this hour right now, you are tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Stay tuned. A lot more about the community and specifically, again, the services available after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
No crashes on your El Paso freeways right now. I-10 eastbound remains slow with 27-minute delays. Vinton down to Thorn. Lane restrictions on I-10 westbound, too, from Trans Mountain up to Vinton. Less than a 5-minute delay there, though. Westbound on Trans Mountain, the ramp to I-10 eastbound is still closed due to road work. And an injury accident downtown Wyoming at Santa Fe. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night. Open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Every day, you breathe in thousands of tiny little germs, allergens, and viruses. Don't let these invisible invaders make breathing through your nose impossible. Flush them out with Navage. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage to make cleaning your nose easy. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, helping flush out everything that makes you miserable. Nearly 4 million people use Navage to breathe better, snore less, and feel healthier. People like Dan, a verified Navage user who writes, I've had trouble with my sinuses for decades. I always thought something like this was a gimmick, but one use and I'm hooked. I should have bought this a long time ago. The results are immediate and incredible. Unquote. If you suffer from sinus congestion, allergies, or snoring, then Navage is the safe, drug-free solution you've been looking for. Navage is at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and Navage.com. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
In this week's Marketers Report, we hear about the importance of local radio from Allison Griffin, head of marketing at State Farm.
iHeart has such a broad broadcast reach that is local, and for us to be able to touch customers with a local feel but at a national scale is so efficient and important for us.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to the audiences, trusted influencers, and data you need to grow. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
There are more identity threats than you realize. Even if you monitor your credit, only a little personal info needs to leak out, like your social security number or password.
Or you to become a victim.
LifeLock alerts you to threats you could miss. If your identity is stolen, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions, but everyone can save up to 25% off their first year with promo code NEWS. Go to LifeLock.com.
Traffic's bad enough without Mother Nature adding to your headache. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Of course, this day can mean a lot of different things for people, and a lot of people react in different ways to, well, what essentially amounts to clinical term that I've become aware of, a trauma anniversary. And it doesn't even have to simply be around those that, again, were directly involved, directly impact, or even second, third hand impacted. It can affect our community as a whole, as it was, as I will continue to argue, an attack on our community. And even as we do see the wheels of justice turning, this can still bring up a lot of things for people in different ways. So in order to talk about that and the way of people can deal with this, and particularly the services that continue to be available, I was able to speak with, again, Celeste Nevares, Chief of Clinical Services with Emergence Health Network, about how this can affect people in different ways. Now, there's truly no right or wrong way to deal with this personally, as long as it is not destructive to yourself, and as well as, again, what people need to know about this even now. So here is that interview. Enjoy. Joining us now, we have Celeste Nevares, Chief of Clinical Services with Emergence Health Network. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely happy to have you on, because it's important things going on and that people need to know about what is going on, particularly even with themselves in the community, because, of course, as this August 3rd anniversary has been approaching, this has been a little bit different this year. Not that any year has been by any means standard, even in the immediate aftermath, because even at that point, we then fell pretty quickly into pandemic issues, shutdowns, remote aspects, and even now with then parts of the trial progressing, but still questions remaining. There can be a lot of jumbled things in people's minds when it comes to this. So one of the particularly critical things, of course, is that just the anniversary itself coming up can lead to people having or experiencing things that either they may have before, may be surprising them this year. And one of the biggest phrases that I think of, and isn't talked about enough, in my opinion, is the concept of trauma anniversaries. because a lot of people think like, well, it didn't happen to me, or it happened so long ago, which is a very, very in comparison kind of thing. It's very much relative to your situation. But when it comes to that idea is that essentially your body has a memory, and unconsciously things can come up even when you don't expect them to.
Absolutely. And you have to think about the last 2 years. The last thing we were worried about was, nuances. So we were worried about our health, our safety, our loved ones, and our lives. And so we've been in this high stress, high stakes time. I mean, our poor central nervous system has been running on high for the last 3 years. So I feel like personally, this anniversary is interesting in that we're not, completely done with COVID. I understand that, but we're not worried at the same levels that we were before.
Sure.
And so I would imagine a lot of people are having these new feelings sort of creep up now that I'm not scared that my family members are going to pass from COVID or myself. Now I'm thinking about the feelings I've maybe suppressed the last 4 years. So
Right.
it's really complex, but the idea of a trauma anniversary, this comes every year and we know it, we anticipate it. And some of us might think, well, I wasn't there, so it doesn't affect me. But it does. It affects all of us just in different ways.
I mean, yeah, we're talking about the incident here that, of course, was effectively an attack on our community. So even outside of, I mean, there's reporting that happens on the news, either locally, regionally, nationally, almost every day about, crimes being committed, other things. And even outside of those, and people can still be impacted by those in their own right, if it, hits close to home or just hits them in a certain way. I mean, this was very much personal in a lot of ways to our community, and also particularly this year, adding on to that, besides the other considerations you talked about, has been, as we've been talking about previously, the progression of the case that we saw the federal trial move forward. And so there was, of course, a lot of coverage that we, of course, also did, because that was the biggest story happening that week, bar none. And so there's been a lot more about this, a lot more coming up that I feel like has added, just kind of kicked it up to 11 again for this particular anniversary.
And I think because it was covered in such great detail, because everybody's curious about it. It's been so
Right.
long, so people wanted to know what's happening now. Are we done, so to speak? I kept hearing that. Are we done with this? Are we done with this? And we're not. And so that adds another layer of complexity, like you mentioned. And so there's a lot going on. Can't stress that enough, that it's complicated, it's complex, and grief is not linear. So we're all impacted in different ways.
Absolutely. So there's a couple things I want to explore here, of course, and the services that you all provide, and particularly for those that were, say, in that courtroom, parts of the victims and things like that, is definitely an important part of the work that you all have been doing behind the scenes this whole time. But particularly for those just in the community that may be thinking about this and thinking, okay, like with this anniversary coming up, or even just thinking about it as there has been more coverage, finding myself being affected maybe in ways that, again, maybe expected or even unexpected. And there are, of course, things that you all do provide on that, but just again, at its base level, with that concept of the trauma anniversary, there's going to be different responses that people have, and no two people are very likely to have exactly the same type of response, type of thoughts, type of impact being felt on them. And basically, all of that is valid, and there are all ways to deal with it.
Absolutely. I think a lot about the fact that when we first talked about these services years ago and then COVID happened, I remember we talked about it during the anniversary and people thought, I don't have the bandwidth to process that right now. Like, the idea of even meeting with you all is too much. And so I'm hoping that people hear this conversation and feel invited to come and see us for services. You do not have to be in that Walmart, or did not have to be, or in that courtroom to be impacted. And so if you do want to meet with us and talk for a few sessions, or, for more than a couple, to talk about those feelings that maybe you didn't have the time, the capacity, the bandwidth for, and now you're ready to, we're here and ready to meet you where you're at.
One of the things that I feel like was changing as we were, at least in, like you mentioned, years ago, which it just kind of hit me the way you put that, because it has been multiple, years plural at this point, is that there was, I believe, barely anecdotally, I was feeling like there was somewhat of that stigma changing, that, beyond the machismo or the we don't talk about that kind of aspects that has been very prevalent, I mean, in our community, and of course, across in different ways across the nation in different varying aspects, but particularly here locally, it was getting beyond the, oh no, that's, or like the underlying idea that it was shameful for some reason, if only because it made people uncomfortable to talk about, essentially. And you're finding that to continue to be the case, or is it still kind of a shifting situation, particularly since there's been, like you said, mentioned, layers of things going on this whole time?
I feel like we've shifted, and I'm I know that's breaking news, but I feel like I've been a therapist now for over 10 years.
Mm.
I'm born and raised here in El Paso, but moved away and came back. And I remember not being able to even, find a job, find agencies that were hiring. It was a whole thing. And now we're just seeing therapists in such great demand, particularly after 8-3, I would say. People recognize the fact that it's okay to talk about this. I know we at Emergence pushed out a bunch of different campaigns, public service announcements
Sure.
to normalize some of those conversations. And we've seen it. I really feel like even in the last few years versus the previous 10 as a therapist, I've seen a huge increase in shift in that. I've seen even family members of mine who are like, why are you going to school for this? Who now come up to me and they say like, oh, I know a friend who has bipolar disorder and I told their granddaughter to come call you. And I'm like, that's great. I'm so impressed right now, but also just filled with gratitude. I feel like as a community, we've made strides in that area. And this is proof of it. The fact that we're continuing to serve and people are continuing to reach out.
Absolutely. So if people want to, based on this, of course, there are a couple of important phone numbers that we'll also put up on screen as part of this here, including the main emergence crisis hotline, but particularly for the August 3rd counseling services with the Community Recovery Center with Emergence Health Network. If people want to call that one, that main number there, 915-301-2825. That's again, 915-301-2825. And if people end up calling that, what will they be connected with and what kind of information can they get?
You'll be connected with our wonderful administrative assistant who's going to ask you a few questions about what kind of services you're needing, how we can best serve you, and then you'll be connected with a therapist in order to be served either in person or we're doing virtual sessions, whatever you need. And our office hours are 9 to 6. So we try to offer some after work flexibility so that people, we know it's hard to get off of work to do this. So we're trying to be as flexible and as accommodating as possible so that we can come to you instead of you feeling like that's another hurdle you have to jump.
And again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Celeste Nevada's Chief of Clinical Services with Emergence Health Network. You want to find out anything more about them or what we're, again, specifically talking about, again, that number for the August 3rd counseling services with the Community Recovery Center, 915-301-2825. But of course, find Emergence Health Network online at emergencehealthnetwork.org. That's EMERGENCE healthnetwork.org. And of course, their main crisis line for any issue, anytime, 915-779-1800. That again, 915-779-1800. So when it comes to particularly the services that have been being provided, of course, no details about anyone's necessarily specific incidents or what their treatment has been like, but when it comes to what has been being provided for members of the community, or specifically those that were, say, in those courtrooms, or those that were most directly affected by August 3rd itself here, I mean, what kind of scope has that taken on?
I'm really proud of the team that I get to oversee. I have the joy and the luxury of seeing them do great work. They have been working with these families since day one. Remember, we were there hours after this happened. And so we've served these families for the last 4 years, some of them. And we work in conjunction with the United Way, the FRC. And so if there are services that we, for whatever reason, cannot provide, or if they need access to something else, we work really closely with them to get them connected to those services. We've also partnered with other law enforcement agencies to be able to be accessible to their families, or if they find survivors of any kind that haven't come through our doors, they connect them to us as well. And so we serve far and wide, and we're continuing to do so.
So with some of those things going on, have you all seen necessarily any kind of uptick or increased interest since particularly the federal trial has gone through?
I will say we have. We've had quite a few people call, not by the masses or anything like that, but we have seen an uptick. And I think it's because the federal case really brings up some maybe unresolved feelings, or like I mentioned, COVID really took a toll on us. And so I didn't have the time to unpack that. And now I do. And so the federal case brought up a lot of feelings. I think we all saw in some of the coverage, and how people had a wide range of emotions and reactions. Sure. And so I think people want to process through that, which is great. Because like you already mentioned, there's not one size fits all.
No, and it's definitely not. I mean, just kind of like any physical injury is never going to happen the same. I mean, someone even in the same, say, car crash is going to have vastly different injuries, vastly different things happening to them, and expecting that to work in the same way would be ridiculous. People would be saying like, well, no, you had your your arm broken as opposed to, a sprained ankle. And feel a very similar type of way when it comes to mental health, because things are going to affect people differently based on their personal experiences, the way they experience the event or the circumstances themselves, and to expect recovery to look the same way. And, just there's different things, different, fortitude, different constitution, different way people handle and perceive the world. So to expect it to work the same way and to be like, well, aren't you done with this now is just, it's unreasonable and almost laughable at this point, except it's still a very serious issue.
And to add to that, how we express it is different as well.
Certainly.
I think that's been interesting to see. People have cried, they have yelled, they have screamed, they have cursed, they have, wanted to be more social, or they've wanted to isolate. And so I think when talking about this in your home, understanding that just because somebody's not weeping uncontrollably doesn't mean it hasn't impacted them. And so the way we express that grief is also different.
Yeah, no, certainly very different. And so with this continuing to progress, because as you mentioned, the big question of, is this over? Or some of the things I was seeing about people being concerned that somehow it either wasn't going to work or it wouldn't be done or it wouldn't be over, those kind of things. And again, just to make it perfectly clear, as we've already talked about today, the federal case, this person we are talking about is never going to breathe a free breath of air again in their life. And that is now kind of the question about how long will that be? Because with the state trial progressing and with the statements having been made by the district attorney for El Paso, Bill Hicks, of pursuing the death penalty, there are still a lot of question marks there, frankly, on how that trial will progress, if it will progress before we go to the next election for the district attorney's office. So with some of those, there are, again, certain and very important things that have been settled, but with there still being some uncertainty, some of those question marks still lingering out there, that can still certainly affect people differently and affect them even how they react on, trauma anniversaries like this.
And I think the fact that you said it earlier, people are frustrated by this and confused by it. So you had to say that at the very beginning, right? This person will not breathe another fresh breath of free air. Excuse me. I think that's confusing to people who are like, why are we having to do this again? Why are we having to go through, excuse me, to go through this all over again? Why does this keep happening? And I think that creates confusion, frustration, animosity. I mean, all sorts of different emotions come through, and a little bit of distrust even, right? Like, are you sure? I know I've had that even in my own sessions with folks, like, but are you sure? I'm like, yes, with confidence. But that can spark just all sorts of fear and frustration all in the same breath.
So when it comes to, I guess, like on an occasion like this or any of these upcoming things, I mean, there's going to continue to be conversation on this. It's reasonable to expect that things may have, upticks or lulls as we continue through, as things become more or less clear, frankly, as we go through the next month's potential years, with some of the dates we're looking at for the at least start of the state trial, then being into 2025 at this point. So we've got potential for this to continue on that level for the next couple of years. So as we look at, frankly, the roller coaster that some people may be on, what advice would you give to people? What would you want them to know? And to, frankly, how to even just treat themselves as we continue through this process, either upcoming anniversaries or the news cycle that goes along with this?
I love that you use the word roller coaster because it's a visual that people can get behind. And being gentle with yourself in that same visual, understanding that this is not just going to be linear or a slow, steady ride, right? It's going to come up, it's going to come down. We're going to feel better. We're going to feel angry. We're going to feel okay. And then we're going to feel sad, right? So it literally is an emotional roller coaster as well as we process through this, and being not necessarily okay with that, but being gentle with yourself with that. Like, I know I hear this too. Well, it's been 4 years. I don't know why I still feel like this. And so you're arguing with the idea of your feelings, which is not productive. Just acknowledging this is how I feel right now. And it is sad or it is uncomfortable and I'm not loving it. But I need to be kind to myself, give myself a little bit of peace of mind. Maybe I need to go out for a walk. Maybe I need to connect with some friends. Maybe I need to go be with people. Whatever's going to protect your peace is so important to nurture that.
And so again, if people at frankly, any of these points, again, with the anniversary this week, that is of, particular focus and concern. But I mean, these services and the things around it and in other places in the community or people's responses, I mean, these are always available and always available to them, kind of regardless of the circumstance, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And going back to what you said about trauma anniversaries, and you used the idea of like a broken bone earlier. So thinking about, thankfully, I've not broken a bone yet.
Wouldn't recommend it. But
yeah, no, thank you. But I know people who have. And so even if you touch that bone near them, I have a friend who has a collarbone injury. And if you get close, I mean, they wince. And it's been how many years? And it's still, right? And so I would say that's the same sort of trauma anniversary there, that you recognize somebody's getting close to that wound. So your natural reaction is to protect it, right? So the same goes for this trauma anniversary. We're getting close to it, an injury, a moral, ethical, emotional injury that we're all recovering from. It's getting close. And so when somebody gets close to that, we all respond in different ways. So instead of arguing with that, right, the same with my friend with the collarbone. I maybe pick on them, but I'm not like, I understand that. You broke that maybe a long time ago, but it still is healing, even emotionally. So being kind to ourselves with that emotional response to this trauma anniversary.
So again, if people want to find out any more information, emergencehealthnetwork.org, the best site for it, but a couple of phone numbers here again for specifically the August 3rd counseling services with the Community Recovery Center, 915-301-2825. That's 915-301-2825. Or again, for the Emergence Health Network main crisis hotline that will connect you with whatever services that you need in this realm, 915-779-1800. That's 915-779-1800. Again, guest with us here in studio right now has been Celeste Nevadas, the Chief of Clinical Services with Emergence Health Network. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us about this, about the concepts, the concerns, and the services particularly available surrounding all of this as we, again, approach or at the anniversary of August 3rd here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And again, thank you to Celeste for speaking with us again. And if you've been wanting to see those numbers on screen, here they are again for, again, the August 3rd Counseling Clinic, 915-301-2825. And for any reason, at any time, the Emergence Health Network Crisis Hotline, 915-779-1800. We're going to go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, some more in-depth on what has been going on and some of the background on even the lead up to this point with a very interesting piece that has come out from El Paso Inc. in the recent weeks. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Vania Castillo with your CBS 4 headlines. Come September, there are new longer hours that go into effect for the El Paso streetcar. The streetcar will now be running 7 days a week and will start its route earlier in the day. This after months of debate surrounding its future. And to Las Cruces, how transportation troubles continue for students in the Las Cruces public schools. The new superintendent for the district, Ignacio Ruiz, is starting the job with a familiar problem for the district: delayed school buses caused by a driver shortage with third-party operators. Parents say there have been improvements over the last week since we first reported about the problem, with the wait time for buses dropping from about an hour to 20 minutes. Still, they say kids should not be waiting at all. For more local headlines, you can check out our website at cbs4local.com.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
No crashes on your El Paso freeways right now. I-10 eastbound remains slow with 27-minute delays. Vinton down to Thorn. Lane restrictions on I-10 westbound, too, from Trans Mountain up to Vinton. Less than a 5-minute delay there, though. Westbound on Trans Mountain, the ramp to I-10 eastbound is still closed due to road work. And an injury accident downtown Wyoming at Santa Fe. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is forecaster Nasai Mancini. Well, folks, temperatures will begin to rise as we make our way even into the weekend and into next week. We do have a heat advisory that will go into effect Friday at 6 a.m., staying in effect till Saturday at 6 a.m. for El Paso. Then we'll upgrade to an excessive heat watch on Saturday at 6 a.m. all the way until Monday at 12 a.m. So make sure, folks, you're staying hydrated and walking those pups in those early morning hours. Head on over to kfoxtv.com for the latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by Valero. Start saving on the road with Valero's 100 Days of Summer. Get fuel-saving snacks, swag, and more every day all summer long. Only with Valero Pay Plus. Download the app and start saving right now. Additional terms and conditions apply.
If you're hiring, it can feel like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/radio. In fact, ZipRecruiter has helped a lot of business owners find their needle in a haystack, like Marco, president of operations at Telly Tires and Auto Centers. Because Telly Tires has grown a lot in the last few years, Marco needed to hire everyone from a receptionist to a store manager to a head mechanic.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill. ZipRecruiter helps me keep my business running.
Take it from Marco and millions of other businesses who've used ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter can help you find the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/RADIO. ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's. This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk, and do appreciate you all tuning in with us, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Appreciate some of the comments and other things being said over there, as well as even just the simple gestures, doing a lot, and do appreciate that for those that are joining us over in that way. So, of course, as we talk about many of the things, including community recovery from this, we mentioned the legal circumstance. And again, I cannot think of a better way to put it, that the perpetrator of the August 3rd events is never going to be a free, walk free, breathe a free breath of air again in their lives. And whether or not you consider that full justice is, well, it certainly is a finality, though, of course, the legal situation is not over. And that's why the article out this week from El Paso Inc., why the Department of Justice took death penalty off the table in Walmart mass shooting remains murky, dated as of July 30th by Reyes Mata. And it's a pretty in-depth one that I would certainly recommend you all look at, going through the many tangled web of events that's in the immediate aftermath, including referencing statements that were made literally the day after the 2019 event, on August 4th. It was said by then District Attorney Jaime Esparza, saying, quote, "I know the death penalty is something very powerful, but in this occasion, it's something that's necessary," adding that this horrific act was committed in our community and he should be held accountable by our community, and that there was some agreement at that point in time, at least it did appear, from both, again, state and even federal officials on this point, with a statement coming out from then U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Texas, John Bash, saying, quote, that the Walmart shooting appeared to, quote, to be designed to intimidate a civilian population, end quote, and that, quote, "we are going to do what we do to terrorists in this country, which is deliver swift and certain justice." And as El Paso Week notes there, that was nearly 4 years ago as of the publication of the article, and then goes through and traces the, again, very complicated series of events that were happening on the back end when it came to how we finally got to that federal prosecution, the plea deal that therefore secured the 90 consecutive life sentences for the convicted shooter. And, well, they asked the question, how did the case devolve from Esparza's original goal of a swift El Paso DA led trial with a death sentence to a delayed federally led hearing with no trial nor death penalty because, as it was part of the plea agreement, there was not evidence presented. There was not arguments made. There were certainly the victim's impact statements, but it was very different. Among other things, federal courts, and this is my note, federal courts do not have the same amount of coverage possibilities. So while there certainly were anecdotes, statements said outside of the courtroom, and things that were relayed from those that were in the courtroom, or at least hearing the proceedings that were going on to it, it is not hearing the testimony, seeing it the way that you have of, say, even other trials that are underway here in the city and county of El Paso, depending on the court you're talking about at this point. So, of course, it's noted that among other things, particularly the state part of it, the part of the tangled web, was the tenure of the now resigned District Attorney Yvonne Rosales, who El Paso Inc. notes about her mismanagement of the DA's office led to her resignation on December 14th of 2022. And then particularly the, well, my phrase, kerfuffle, but does feel a little bit more than that at this point, is about, well, the issues and the filings, even back and forth between Rosales and the 409th District Judge Sam Medrano, who was issued and still believe does preside over the case, the state's case, at least in the current local proceedings. And here is one point that I did end up missing in the progression of all of that. We had more than a few interviews, discussions, other conversations about what was going on with the district attorney's office at or leading up to that point in time. And one of the filings made specifically September 20th, 2022, as again El Paso Inc. notes, was a, quote, note of potential evidence, end quote, that alleged a deal between Medrano and the gunman's defense attorney, Joe Spencer, to, quote, prevent the prosecution of the Walmart mass shooting case. And again, directly quoting from El Paso Inc. here, the filing alleged that Medrano spoke with a federal official whose identity was redacted and was an agreement was reached to, quote, defer, end quote, the Walmart case to the federal courts as a way of placating Spencer, who was, quote, heard to demand that the state of Texas remove the death penalty, end quote, the court document stated. Now, El Paso Inc. does note here, and I do believe correctly so, that this is not necessarily a completely unbiased statement or filing on there, as there was a lot of filings that were made that were considered to be, as they put it, grandstanding and politically tainted, but it is a part of the record of this case when it comes to the state trial. Another very interesting part of the investigation, frankly, that El Paso Inc. looks in as part of this is into the disparity between types of prosecution. At least one of the lines that has been said or discussed on this program has been the idea of death penalty being essentially not exactly disavowed, but frowned upon, certainly, by the current administration, which, of course, does have quite a lot of, well, jurisprudence is the right phrase either, but leeway and prosecutorial discernment, one way to put it, when it comes to the progression of this. But again, El Paso Inc. looking further on this in the subsection about shifting positions, talking about and looking at even other investigations that have been done across the country about federal positions when it comes to the death penalty, among specifically comparing the El Paso August 3rd with the 2017 murder and terrorism killings by Sayfullo Saipov in New York City. Noting at an article from the Washington Post, quote, in a twist compared to the situation in El Paso, the Justice Department is seeking death for Saipov, S-A-I-P-O-V, in New York, which banned capital punishment in state cases. So there is, of course, some speculation here based on the evidence and based what has been found. But, well, the progression of this and the continued intent, it has been, of course, said since some of these things and some of these events came out, that, of course, current El Paso District Attorney Bill Hicks, who has said he is going to continue and plans to move forward with the state trial as the lead agency in that case for it, saying to El Paso Inc., quote, I hope that at some point where we will have some finality for family members, but I don't know if some of these victims are ever going to truly see closure just because of how traumatic it is. And again, final quoting from the end of the El Paso Inc. article, Hicks maintains that the El Paso DA's office will include the death penalty as an option for jurors to decide in the punishment phase of the state's Walmart trial, because whatever penalty is being sought, of course, by prosecutors, state prosecutors in this case, it is still up to the jury to determine, particularly in cases like this, the complete guilt or innocence on any of the charges, as well as the specific penalties that can come along with them. They've heard of jury awards in different ways, and that's in a similar vein because it will be up to them to decide if they truly will choose that as a sentence. And Hicks says, remember, quote, we still have to prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt. The very important standard that does exist within murder trial cases. And I think there is still a lot of consideration, particularly within this community, and a lot of thoughts on it, which is one of the reasons that I do have. I wonder if there will be a change of venue, possibility. That's not directly addressed in the Paso Inc. article or really anywhere else. All I can say with a mild amount of certainty, as I don't have up to the minute filings from it, is that there has not been that pushed for at this point. Of course, certain other things will need to happen, including a transfer to state custody, as El Paso Inc. Does note, among other things, that he was transferred again, the convicted shooter in this case, into federal custody on, I do believe, July 11th is what they note there. And so he remains there for the minute. But in the meantime, that is one of the biggest question marks, as we do, of course, mark the August 3rd date and commemoration, is what will happen with that. And I say with no small amount of trepidation what that may continue to bring up or drag up for this community. Some other comments coming in, again, appreciating those sharing their thoughts over on our social media. We will go ahead and open up the phone lines as we usually do at this point during the program, but I'm just going to say this. I'm going to have very little to no patience with things, grandstanding, and or anything besides what is important for this community at this point in time. So phone lines actually filled up pretty quickly there, but if you want to get on the line, we will be taking that and particularly getting into the next hour of the program, as there are other things going on. But as we are a local radio show, I cannot imagine anything else more important to talk about going on or affecting this community right now. So if you're wanting to add your 2 cents or make your comments online, that phone number, of course, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
No crashes on your El Paso freeways right now. I-10 eastbound remains slow with 27-minute delays. Vinton down to Thorn. Lane restrictions on I-10 westbound, too, from Trans Mountain up to Vinton. Less than a 5-minute delay there, though. Westbound on Trans Mountain, the ramp to I-10 eastbound is still closed due to road work. And an injury accident downtown Wyoming at Santa Fe. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Valero. Start saving on the road with Valero's 100 Days of Summer. Get fuel-saving snacks, swag, and more every day all summer long. Only with Valero Pay Plus. Download the app and start saving right now. Additional terms and conditions apply.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Just go to 4hims.com/radio. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and trusted generic alternatives to the name brands at up to 95% off. That's right. Get generic for Viagra, the same active ingredient as brand name Viagra, but for 95% less. It's the same medication, still prescribed by a licensed medical provider, but with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, 4hims.com/radio. That's 4hims.com/radio for your free online visit. FORHIMS.com/RADIO.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else. And we can give you access to those potential customers more cost-effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. From your cell, dial #250 and say keyword great results. That's #250 and say great results.
Signs, signs everywhere, signs. Signs for your business and signs for your ride. Sign Pros is the place where we make your signs.
Sign Bros is your source for vehicle wraps, window graphics, LED outdoor signs, and much more. 20 years in business locally. Call 855-8000, visit 1387 George Dieter, Suite C104, or go to signbrosep.com, where you don't pay for a sign pays for itself. Sign Bros.
Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Getting a news feed on your phone while driving
makes driving more difficult.
This is dangerous. Getting a news feed without a computer or mobile device?
It would be impossible.
Unless, of course, you get your live news feeds at the top and bottom of the hour.
It's easy.
Traffic and weather all day.
It's as simple as that.
Trending stories tend to change.
Every minute of every day.
Twice an hour, we'll feed your curiosity.
Stay informed. Shouldn't we listen? They're hungry.
News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk, and do appreciate you all tuning in and joining us however may be best working for you, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days. Comments coming in there, including from RJ, appreciating the guests for this, the guests we had in this hour, and saying also seen a victim service specialist from the FBI, I believe, and she said saw someone make the sign of the cross before walking into that Walmart. It's still affecting this town, and I'm not sure that it ever won't affect this community, or at least at some way, at some level. It would be great if at some point in the far off future, because I can't imagine it happening any sooner, this would be something that is just a historical note. But even beyond living memory, I would have to imagine this is still going to be something impactful. But then again, I hope, and I continue to hope, the legacy for this community will be of resilience and of standing up to what has been espoused by that, because there is nothing that can be justified for those actions, any way that can be put forth as this is anywhere near reasonable or anything along like it. There's a reason that we say many of the things we do on this program, including the idea that anyone saying that there is no political solution, well, it's very much in the vein of this type of action. And anyone who espouses that is not going to find themselves having a good time on this program. So with that, we're actually out of time here for this break and going to need to take for the top of the hour. So at the top of the hour, we'll get to those phone calls. Lines still full up, but that number to call again, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash on the 54 Patriot northbound at Pershing Drive is blocking 2 right lanes, only a couple of left lanes getting by. Police activity in the area on North Desert Boulevard near Paseo del Norte exit ramp. Expect delays from that. A city bus having a mechanical issue, I-10 eastbound at Geronimo. That's blocking the right lane. Everybody's merging to the left. And the exit ramp's blocked on the I-10 eastbound at Piedras. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
My friend and I are taking a trip to Mexico this year, but neither of us speak Spanish. So we downloaded Babbel and started learning Spanish fast.
Want to start getting conversational in another language in as little as 3 weeks? Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons were designed by language experts to be the most efficient and effective way to learn a new language.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿De dónde eres?
¿De dónde eres?
Babbel's interactive lessons are created by real language teachers and voiced by real native speakers using a modern conversation-based method. So in no time, you can start speaking confidently about real-life topics in another language.
Nosotras vamos a México en 2 días y ahora hablamos español. Gracias, Babbel. Sí, muchas gracias.
Babbel, language for life. Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. Just go to Babbel.com and start learning a new language today. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Recently, we hit the streets and found out how informed people really are.
Yes, I'm on top of events.
Most news, yes.
Except for these two.
I am not on top of events.
I'm not on top of my events, no.
They were clueless that every morning they can plug into the world with the news, weather, and traffic info that'll make their lives so much easier and more informed. just like you and I do. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Former President Trump says it's a sad day for America. He made those comments Thursday after pleading not guilty to criminal charges connected to his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Speaking from the airport in Virginia, Trump noted he thinks his indictment is politically motivated.
This is a persecution of a political opponent. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers.
Trump faces 4 counts, including conspiracy to defraud the U.S. The first hearing in the case is scheduled for August 28th. Trump was released under the condition that he doesn't speak with any witnesses in the case unless it's through or with lawyers present. Millions of Americans are dealing with heat alerts across the South. Major cities in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Kansas are all facing several days of dangerous heat as the index is forecast to go above 110 degrees. 2 U.S. Navy sailors are accused of spying for China. The Justice Department announced the arrests of the 2 active duty members Thursday. A 22-year-old sailor based in San Diego and a 26-year-old based at Naval Base Ventura County north of Los Angeles were taken into custody Wednesday. The man convicted of killing 11 people at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh has been formally sentenced to death. Lisa Taylor reports.
A federal jury reached a unanimous decision Wednesday, which recommended that Robert Bowers be sentenced to death. Bowers was convicted in June on more than 60 charges in the 2018 shooting. A judge handed down the sentence to the 50-year-old this morning. I'm Lisa Taylor.
The jackpots for the Mega Millions and Powerball lotteries are growing. Over $1.2 billion is up for grabs in the Mega Millions drawing tomorrow night. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Forecasters are sticking to their prediction of an above-average Atlantic hurricane season this year. The latest update from Colorado State University predicts 18 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major storms of Category 3 or higher. That's the same as their forecast last month. Tropical weather experts at the university initially called for a below-average season. California's Temecula Valley Unified School District is getting sued for its ban on critical race theory. Daniel Martindale reports.
The ban was approved by the district board's conservative majority last December. The same school board also refused to buy textbooks featuring information about late gay rights leader Harvey Milk. The lawsuit was filed by a nonprofit group, Public Counsel, on behalf of parents, students, and teachers. It says the ban on critical race theory is censoring teachers and infringes on students' fundamental right to education. I'm Daniel Martindale.
Some A-list celebrities are putting their money into supporting the ongoing Hollywood actors strike, now nearly 3 weeks old. Scott Carr reports.
While many actors have taken to the picket lines, Variety reports George Clooney and Meryl Streep have helped to lead a donation drive that's brought in more than $15 million to financially support the strikers. They each donated $1 million to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, which gives assistance to those facing the uncertainty of not getting a paycheck. And they've called on other top stars to contribute, bringing in cash from actors including Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Dwayne Johnson, and Oprah Winfrey. The actors have been striking for better pay, particularly from streaming services, and they want safeguards over the use of artificial intelligence in the industry.
It's not the end of an era for Taylor Swift after all. The pop star announced more tour dates in the U.S. and Canada for fall 2024. She added 3 shows each in Miami, New Orleans, and Indianapolis, along with 6 shows in Toronto. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Our iHeartRadio Music Festival is coming back to Las Vegas.
September 22nd and 23rd at T-Mobile Arena.
Streaming live only on Hulu.
And starting Monday, you could win your way there.
Plus $1,000 spending cash.
Yeah. Having the time of your life is more rewarding than ever when you visit any MGM Rewards destination nationwide. Dine, stay, play, and earn on all of it. Details at MGMRewards.com. Subject to earning and redemption limitations applicable to certain purchases and in certain states.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. Dog days of summer got your business needing help? Check out Indeed, an all-in-one hiring solution that makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 toward your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
The Rod Ryan Show.
It's
The Woody Show.
It's Elliot in the morning. All of the once-in-a-lifetime events. All of the best free curated playlists. The best bands. All of the great podcasts for every interest.
The stuff they don't want you to know.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome. All of your favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
Most of the time, traffic is pretty good. But there are times when traffic can be pretty bad. No, I mean like really bad. Almost, but more like an asteroid's gonna hit the city and everyone's trying to get out of town at once and nobody's car is moving and people are running down the highway clutching their kids and whatever belongings they can grab. Yep, now you got it. It's times like these you need your severe traffic station.
Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
There are things that go together that make mornings better. Coffee and cream, bacon and eggs, pancakes and syrup.
Let's take a look at traffic and weather together.
Traffic and weather. Yeah.
Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio. Updates all day long.
General things like that help me get through my day.
Before you head out, get together with our traffic and weather. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Those tuning in, joining us over there, of course, do appreciate it. Particularly those dropping those likes and reacts. Amber Banda, Rick Reyes, RJ Promotes, James Holmes, Thu Huynh, Ion Graham, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, and more, because on a particularly day like today, talking about the things going on affecting us here in the community, like one that was from our news partners at KFOX 14, not one of their major focuses of today, given the date, but that, they'll pass the streetcars, extending operations to 7 days a week starting in September. Not, well, okay, they go into the evening, particularly 11 p.m., like Friday and Saturday, but still, the idea of it being more usable and therefore more useful to community, probably a good thing. But there's a whole lot more going on, even as, again, the focus and a lot of the community events going on today very much focus on the anniversary of August 3rd. So let's go ahead and get to those phone lines now. Again, full up at the moment. And just as a reminder, I'm going to have a very low patience for things that are not about and for this community here today. So it's one of those days, but let's go ahead and get to those phone lines here. Again, that number, if you want to get on the line later, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Marco over in Central on the line with us here right now. Marco, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew, how's it going, brother?
Doing all right there. What's on your mind?
Hey, brother, don't despair. Remember, the day ends, and there's always a new day, okay? I know you can be frustrated, but we have to learn to let our frustrations roll off us like water, correct?
Yep, fair enough.
Alrighty, brother. Well, today I want to talk about my second pillar in my campaign.
No, sure.
And so the second pillar is going to involve the downtown area and what my plans are for the downtown area. We already spoke about putting about the Crest building and putting in a Target or a Walmart. I think that's a big discussion that should be had, and it's an important discussion that needs to be had. The other part of my plan is how can we use the trolley system to make it better to where instead of just going in the west side, some of the west side around the college area, how can we extend that to go up Mesa and down Montana? This way we can start grabbing people from outside of the little area and have that trolley system bring people to the downtown area. My vision for the downtown area is to make it into an outdoor mall setting. Vehicles obviously would still be allowed to go in there, but I want to make it to how it used to be. You know, the Popular should be a Macy's. We should have a Sears downtown. We should have a lot of big companies downtown. The problem is that we don't have a way to get into the downtown area very easy. My last part of my idea for the downtown area is what I would like to do and what I would like to see is 2 tarps to be made. One of the tarps to be made on Stanton Street, and so we would cover Stanton Street from Matas, the little produce area from there, all the way up Stanton to Texas. And so we would cover that. It would be lit, and it would tell the story of El Paso. I don't know if people are familiar with Fairmont Street in Las Vegas, but very similar to that. The other place that we would do that is in El Paso Street, and we would do it from the bridge all the way up to the Camino Real, right before the little door that's right there that says "Welcome to El Paso," whatever it says. I think if we can do these things in the downtown area to make it better, I would like to re-qualify the downtown area as an old town area. The last part of my idea for the downtown area and how we can start to make our government function better is I would like to have a discussion with whoever is in charge of the Wells Fargo building and how we can maybe transfer all of the institutions that are functions of the city government into that building. And this way we will have one building that's a unified building for everything that El Pasoans need, instead of them driving around here and over here and some of the functions are here. No, you would have one unified area where the entire function of government is, which is why we had a city hall until they decided to destroy it. And so that is my idea for the downtown area, and that's the second platform, the second pillar of my campaign. I'm trying to advance the conversation because really we don't have the conversations in El Paso today are about the level of corruption, and believe me, the level of corruption in the city is so bad, and so we need to find ways to get rid of it, but also isolate it. And also advance the city, because the city deserves industry. You know, when you have the amount of people with degrees leaving the city because they don't want to stay here because there's very little to offer them as far as STEM goes and stuff. We need to reevaluate the way even our colleges, because our college shouldn't be nothing more than a diploma mill. It should be an institution of learning. So we need to rethink the way the functions are happening in El Paso. And again, this is me, Marco, running for mayor, and tomorrow I'll give you the last pillar of my platform. But for right now, this is my second idea for the downtown area, how we can make it function better, how we can extend the trolley system up and down Mesa to allow more people into the downtown area, and really change the function of government, localize it, and make it better.
Interesting concept to bring up there. I personally had some frustration with the way the trolley was implemented. I'll admit I've been on it with myself. Got some family coming into town before too long, and they've wanted to go onto it, so they'll probably be my excuse. I just have had no need of it. I tend to go straight to the areas, and I know that the idea of it was kind of it pitched as frankly, a little bit of a tourist attraction, to be honest with you. And the way that the route is, it was very much, I would say, arguably designed not for well, for residents to use. I mean, it should be, but as a, hey, this is a neat thing, but it's not meant for like the general public. Let me put it more accurately that way, because yeah, if it was meant to be something that was a true transportation solution, it would have gone, like you said, down Mesa or Montana, frankly, some of the major routes. Now, maybe not Mesa itself, even though once it gets into like our neck of the woods here near the station, there's not like a whole lot of like side streets that you could also use, because I get wanting to keep Mesa for like street traffic and not wanting to have the trolley bogged down in that. And that's why it's kind of on either side of Mesa through the near, Sunset Heights area. And, but still, you'd think, yeah, Montana, or at least side streets adjacent to Montana, would probably be a good idea. Though, I think if you really, really want to talk about it, you start talking about, well, frankly, an L, like a Chicago style, elevated railway, which, okay, I'm not saying that that wouldn't be useful around here. What I do think is that the stepping stones to get there would be like to have like true light rail in our region would take more investment and like more proven work of it. So whether the trolley would work or not and be a good example of that, I don't know, but making it more useful couldn't hurt. I would do feel, though, I think that a lot of infrastructure, and also, of course, don't forget the whole downtown redoing whatever they're going to do with the widening of I-10 that may or may not end up messing with the bridges that the trolley also, of course, goes over into downtown. Those are all kind of specters over this, and there's been a lot of work being done in the background, but like the clear ideas of what that's going to be like, well, we just have certain expectations and certain reasonable assumptions at this point, but that's all we've really got.
I absolutely agree. Are you reading my mind, by the way? Because I was about to tell you, what we could do going into the west side is actually build a monorail where the trolley would reach a point and actually elevate it, make it go over. And we could do these things. Obviously, they would cost money, but it's thinking outside of the box. How do we make El Paso a hub of an economic center where we start inviting people to come back here? Because we really need to rethink the way this is a problem. Okay, when the biggest industry in your city are teachers, that means we don't have enough of other industries. And I'm not saying that teachers are bad, by the way, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But when the biggest industry in your city is teaching, we're lacking other industries. So we need to find ways to encourage more companies to come to El Paso. When I get in there, obviously one of my jobs is to be the biggest cheerleader for El Paso. I will be approaching X. I will be approaching Facebook or Meta. We'll be approaching Levi Strauss. We'll be approaching other car companies that aren't here anymore. So one of my ideas is actually to approach Suzuki again. How can we get Suzuki to come back? Because the line of smaller vehicles that they're putting out is so incredible and really beneficial to people in low-income situations. So that's some of the ideas that I'm trying to bring to the city. And again, Andrew, that's a brilliant idea. Instead of working on the trolley system, we should have worked on a monorail system, which would have been beautiful for this city.
It's an interesting concept. I think that at least feasibly, the best way to see actual implementation of light rail in the region might be like an El Paso Las Cruces link, but that's a separate conversation and one going on here. So, I mean, there's a lot to discuss there about things that could be done. So I appreciate at least bringing up some of the ideas and the concepts with it. So I do appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
You too, brother. And by the way, tomorrow we're going to talk about that link between El Paso and Las Cruces when my final pillar. Thank you, brother.
Fair enough. I appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one. All right, with that, we got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, there is definitely a lot more to be talked about, and a lot more going on, and a lot more, again, I want to hear from y'all, particularly on this anniversary, the commemorations going on for August 3rd. So lines available now, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned. Ruli's International Kitchen, just a great little gourmet dive, perfect for the everyday occasion or those special occasions in your life. With them now doing some of the Rick at Night, as in Ruli's International Kitchen, R-I-K, Rick at Night, with their reverse happy hour and pizza specials. So make sure you check them out. Find them online, rulisik.com, RULISIK.com. or give them a call, 915-313-4806. That's 915-313-4806 to make your reservation, or just find them there, 4176 North Mesa, not too far from Mesa and Executive, Ruli's International Kitchen.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic stop and go through the downtown area on I-10 eastbound after a crash at Piedras. That accident is blocking 2 lanes. We can see by the freeway cameras, including a fire truck there. On the 54 Patriot northbound after Pershing Drive, an accident's blocking 2 right lanes there, causing delays. North Desert Boulevard at Paseo del Norte, police activity. And slow traffic is back on the I-10 eastbound Vinton down to Thorne, 10-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
In today's Marketers Report, Kate Cronin, Chief Brand Officer of Moderna, weighs in on the speed of audio production.
In this day and age, and particularly at Moderna, where we have new information coming out on a regular basis, being able to feed that information to the audio format makes being nimble and pivoting easy, and that's what I really like about it.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to the audiences, influencers, insights, and data you need to grow. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
El Paso Electric is proud to present The Installers, live in your neighborhood. With their unique talent, they're bringing smart meters to every home and business and harmonies your electric bill. Smart meters give you the power to control energy use so you can rock and save every month. Let me see your hands in the air. Find your tour date at epelectric.com/smartmeters.
No Hollywood release can match it.
It's worth the wait. Who complains?
No television drama can equal it.
That was the scariest episode of your show.
And nothing else comes close to the drama.
This is unbelievable.
And you know what? Quite frankly, this scares people.
Join the conversation. We have seen this movie before. We know that it doesn't end well.
Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Ask Sherwin-Williams during the Shades of Summer sale, July 28th through August 7th, and get 35% off paints and stains with prices starting at $28.92. That means 35% off our most popular color family, blue. Psychologists have found it to be soothing and relaxing, which makes it especially great for bedrooms and bathrooms. And of course, get 35% off all of our other colors. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Your home is the place where you know your loved ones are secure. But the things that keep your home protected can't keep pests at bay. That's where RAID comes in. For 60 years, RAID scientists have worked to protect people around the world with trusted research, ingredients, testing standards, and product efficacy. RAID seeks to create a better future for all, especially the ones you love most. RAID, protection for all.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of conversation, particularly on some of those ideas brought up here by the previous caller, including Juan's over on the YouTube. They're saying just don't let the property taxpayers pay for all that. And other like Buddy Vi saying monorail, this isn't Disneyland. Not gonna lie, no critique necessarily on the idea, though it's interesting one to debate. Definitely the monorail song from The Simpsons got stuck in my head there for a half second, I will say that. But also James Radcliffe asking, where's the website, Marco? Because if you are have a definite yes and shows that you're running and showing a website. I know it's been a call for before, but I mean, appreciate conversation about things that could go on, and of course, happened here in the city of El Paso, among other things. But others, including others chiming in, like on Rueda, talking about spending his day, and also, of course, marking the sad anniversary, as well as all other comments about electability and such here. So if you want to chime in over there, that's the right place to do so, over on the different social pages here. But let's go back to those phone lines right now. We do have online with us right now Raul in the Northeast line with us. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. So, Marco for mayor. I want you to write Trump and tell him that if you become mayor, you're going to pass a city resolution condemning him for ripping off the city of El Paso for $600,000 and demand again that he pay our poor city, and they get El Paso's Trumpers to have fundraisers to pay off Trump's theft. That's a lot of money, $600,000, Now, the death penalty is not a deterrent to mass killers who anticipate or plan death by cop, okay? So what else are the right-wingers talking about to distract the loony lemmings in Trump's cult from the unprecedented and historic third arraignment of the former twice-impeached president of the United States? Well, right-wingers, on your station, by the way, are talking the reliable, xenophobe, and racist GOP scare issue of immigration, accusing Democrats of opening up the border so that we're wide open, which is a lie, and that immigrants are flooding in like they have forever, huh? A little bit more, a little bit less here and there, Now we got global climate change refugees, by the way, besides failed states. And anyway, they're flooding in, and they're replacing Americans and illegally flooding into the country for all the government bennies that they're getting, that poor Americans are getting. Now, in my view, this racist xenophobic rhetoric is what that Trump amped up, and that incited a Trump terrorist to murder 23 people in El Paso. The worst thing that has ever happened to El Paso, which Trump incited.
Don't think I don't know what you're doing here. We've had this conversation many times before, but let me put it to you this way. Anyone, and I do mean anyone, who comes down, and frankly, there's a reason. We've had this conversation on air previously with other people as well on the idea of invasion. Some people even referencing it even as of today. So here's the reason, among other things, that when we talk about this, I do not use that phrase, and I not do it because if we're talking about an invasion, and if you want to see a real invasion, I would encourage people to look at Ukraine or of any of the things that are possible going on with China and the way they're looking at Taiwan with very hungry eyes. But let me put it this way. What do you do about an invasion? Because if we're talking about an invasion in what is the actual dictionary definition of it here? It's something that is happening specifically as a movement of usually military forces into an area, and an instance of invading a country or a region with an armed force. So what happens when you respond to an invasion? You usually are meeting it with other armed forces. And this is why, to a certain point, I get the rhetoric, I get the idea of it, this chest thumping, using strong terms, but there's a reason. And I have said this many times previously. I completely eschew the use of the language of war when it comes to any of these issues we talk about, whether it be some of the differences in politics, or the way we talk about policies, or even just the political discussions that come along with this. Because if you are saying that, I get it. We got to fight it. We have to resist, all those kind of things that amp people up, and rhetoric at a certain point fits that. But when you're talking about an invasion, how do you meet that? You meet it with force of arms. And that's why whenever it's talked about this way, and I really don't have any justification for anyone still using that at this point in time, particularly in our community, because saying that, this is an invasion, and I know people have brought up the idea of, military-aged males, and that gets pretty dicey as then a justification for then putting forth what has been seen. Even Governor Greg Abbott, he has been using the idea of military justification. I don't know if that's the right way that we should be going within the state. Is certainly not present in our area, but the way you deal with this is not by, therefore, if you want to put in reasonable restrictions, things to be done about it, changes in the movement, policy changes, that's one thing. But we start talking about, again, invasion. What comes to mind? One for me, being a World War II buff, is definitely, the Allied invasion of Normandy. And to refer to this in the same terms and the same terminology as an instance as that is, at the very least, facetious, at the very least, ingenuine, at the worst, inciting. So, again, make this perfectly clear. Anyone saying that force of arms is what is being need to met with the very much social and international issues that do exist in our area. We do keep up on what is going on at our border and the things going on with it and the policies in place because they do directly affect our area. But anyone saying that, well, that just means we need to take X violent action, insert here, is not someone I am going to agree with. And let's make that perfectly clear when it comes to, because, yes, that level of it and the idea of removing of it, I mean, there's many of the statements we read today, including the idea of the racist, xenophobic attack and the parts of it that were exhibited by what happened in our community. Anyone saying that, yeah, no, it's fine that way. I need you to wake up and smell the roses because it has literally directly affected this community already. So appreciate the point in the call, particularly on the local aspect of this here when it comes worth to that. But like I said, going to have a very small patience for anything not directly relating to us, to this area, and to the issues we face here, and including overcoming this here today. We're going to go and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we will take more calls on the line, but let that just be evidence of what this means and how we will be handling this here today. So, taking the next break right now again, Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. That phone number to call, 915-544-5876544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Vania Castillo with your CBS 4 headlines. Come September, there are new longer hours that go into effect for the El Paso streetcar. The streetcar will now be running 7 days a week and will start its route earlier in the day, this after months of debate surrounding its future. And to Las Cruces, how transportation troubles continue for students in the Las Cruces public schools. The new superintendent for the district, Ignacio Ruiz, is starting the job with a familiar problem for the district: delayed school buses caused by a driver shortage with third-party operators. Parents say there have been improvements over the last week since we first reported about the problem, with the wait time for buses dropping from about an hour to 20 minutes. Still, they say kids should not be waiting at all. For more local headlines, you can check out our website at CBS4Local.com.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Traffic is still slow through downtown due to a crash I-10 eastbound at Piedras, blocking the left lane. Fire trucks on the scene there, and 10-minute delays all the way back to Wyoming. On the 54 Patriot at Pershing, that earlier crash is off to the right. All lanes are back open. And watch for an accident in the lower valley, southbound on the loop at the I-10 gateway. Gary Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is forecaster Nasai Mancini. Well, folks, temperatures will begin to rise as we make our way even into the weekend and into next week. We do have a heat advisory that will go into effect Friday at 6 a.m., staying in effect till Saturday at 6 a.m. for El Paso. Then we'll upgrade to an excessive heat watch on Saturday at 6 a.m. all the way until Monday at 12 a.m. So make sure, folks, you're staying hydrated and walking those pups in those early morning hours. Head on over to KFOXTV.com for the latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Keep your family and livelihood safe with Mazer Security Alarms. Systems start at under $35 per month. No job is too small or too large. For your free quote or to upgrade your existing system, call Mazer Security Alarms at 915-590-0033.
If you're hiring, it can feel like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. In fact, ZipRecruiter has helped a lot of business owners find their needle in a haystack, like Marco, president of operations at Telly Tires and Auto Centers. Because Telly Tires has grown a lot in the last few years, Marco needed to hire everyone from a receptionist to a store manager to a head mechanic.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill. ZipRecruiter helps me keep my business running.
Take it from Marco and millions of other businesses who've used ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter can help you find the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/RADIO. ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Since 2010, Blindster has sold millions of custom blinds, shades, and shutters to satisfied customers across the country with 20,000 5-star reviews and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. Custom blinds at low prices and free shipping. Blindster.com.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. A lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
That's just one adoption story that started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch.tv, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. So, a lot of conversation, a lot of things going on in our comments, and of course on the airwaves here. And if you want to add your 2 cents, phone lines full up at the moment, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM is the number to call here. And of course, on a day like today, we've been delving a lot into things not in, about, or for our community. And I'm going to have very little patience continue to do that for today. But let's get back to those phone lines here now. We do have online with us right now. We do have Frankie and Messia on the line with us. Frankie, thank you for joining us.
Well, let me say this. I just heard Marco, and myself personally, you know, I'm kind of a romantic at heart. I love old-style stuff because probably I'm old. But that's okay.
Okay.
You know, now, when he's talking about resurrecting the trolley system in El Paso, and the tracks are still there, by the way. All they did was just put a bunch of asphalt over them. So that's workable. The other aspect about El Paso to Las Cruces with a train line, I could see that too. And I could see romantically, hey, let the old style steam engine going from El Paso to Las Cruces, and we got 2 stops. We have Mesilla Park and Las Cruces itself. Las Cruces one is like a museum, a beautiful station. I mean, it's a workable thing. But El Paso in itself has got a lot of potential. You know, I beat up on you guys in El Paso. I still call it Funky Town. I love that place. But you guys have got a lot of potential there. The whole thing with El Paso right next to Ciudad Juarez, I mean, it's the creme de la creme. I mean, it's the potentials are magnificent. That's all I want to say about that right out of the box. What do you think of that?
I mean, I certainly agree with you on the idea of potential and being built with it, and also that by interconnecting. Okay, the last few years have maybe made the idea of public transportation a little bit more dicey than it is. But what are some of the great cities we think about in the world in terms of what it means to live and be in them? I think most people would agree that in this region right now, if you do not have a personal vehicle, you are pretty well disconnected. I mean, there are some bike lanes, some ways, but still a lot of long distances. I mean, heck, just to drive from one end of the county to the other, even if you're not doing it through rush hour traffic, takes a better part of an hour. Never mind the idea of you trying to do anything based on human power to get through it. But you think about, you know, the big cities, the nice places, the places people like want to vacation to and visit. And I'm not saying that's the standard we have to live up to, but what do they often come down to? The idea of public transportation to get around, and also the idea of walkable cities. So the idea of, Marco brought up, of like turning some into like, you know, walkable boulevards. There have been successful examples. There have been a lot of unsuccessful examples. Don't get me wrong as well, because if you're not doing it with the right reasons in mind and making it, you know, enticing, inviting, and not just a, you know, glorified park where there are a bunch of, there's right and wrong ways to do it. And there's been a lot studied and said on these, and I've looked at it from other places, but the ability for people to live in a place without having to have more stuff. ends up being some of those defining factors. So it's an interesting idea to explore. I'll certainly agree on that.
Well, I didn't hear that. And the bugaboo's in the details.
Sure.
And sometimes you have to look backwards to go forward. You resurrect what worked earlier, and then you just kind of tweak it a little bit, not dramatically, and it works at this particular point. And again, I have to, kind of agree with Raul. If this thing is going to increase El Paso residents' property taxes, that's going to be a no-go right out of the box. Even if the thing works, it's going to be convenient to everybody. The ding, 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 ding with the trolleys. Well, when I was in Europe,
Sure.
they had that. In Germany and in Europe, they're very functional. They split the difference between public transportation, very functional, on time, and private automobiles. We lost that aspect when we decided to go totally cars, and everybody else has just got screwed. So he does have a point, meaning Marco, but whether or not this thing works, for all the reasons you can imagine, I don't know. But hey, give it a shot, right?
I mean, it's an interesting idea to consider. Again, dude, definitely the devil is always in the details, and about making it work or not, or making it viable to continue on both politically and then also to an extent financially, because it would have to. The way, I mean, you think about all the places like major cities in this country that have public transportation, mostly in, Midwest and mostly on the East Coast, frankly. I mean, I'm thinking of the elevated rail like they have in Chicago that I've been on, and as well as, New York City subway, El Paso, not the El Paso, the Washington, D.C. Metro. And those are things that they were a bit aspirational even at their time. I mean, you want to go back to the New York City subway, they were being drawn by horses at the beginning. So, the point is that those were things that have developed over a long time, and frankly there have been changes in those locales to go along with it. I actually had family that in DC at the time, they had I think it was a condo, not an apartment, they owned it, and there was then a metro line that was built or expanded through their area, and they saw their property values change, because that's one of the things that increased significantly, actually. And so that's one of the things that is about, seeing the changes, at least in that local society, of embracing it and seeing as a useful thing. At the moment, I'm not sure. It would be very interesting to see if there has been any change in along the trolley route itself or near the stations, but that's kind of one of those indicators of it being seen as useful, accepted, and people like building their lives around it. I think that's been one of the things that has kind of hamstrung the trolley so far, the idea of, okay, it's not really available. It means that, if you can't rely on it, you can't use it all the time, you then make other choices to have cars, among other things.
Well, even though I live in Mesilla, and I go to El Paso every once in a while, and I love El Paso. The people there are absolutely gorgeous, beautiful people, and I think it's got a lot of potential. El Paso, you got hit 14 different ways on Sunday, but I think everybody out there in El Paso putting their heads together, you can resurrect this city. And you could be that just absolutely gorgeous Southwest city. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. So whether it's Marco or anybody else, go for it. Make it happen, everybody out there in El Paso. That's what I'm saying. I'm for you.
Well, greatly appreciate that. Thanks for the point on the call. Do appreciate it.
Okay, Andrew. Take care.
All right. Have a good one there as well. So with that, I think we got time to get at least another call or two on the line here. I think I'm in line with our breaks. Yep. We're good to go here. So we do have Eric on the east side here with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hello there. Yeah. One of the reasons why I speak out against white supremacy and the racism towards Hispanics promoted by everyday conservatives and their information sources is because of the right-wing terrorist attacks they cause, the racism towards Hispanics they cause, not just here in El Paso, but across the entire country. Like, this right-wing terrorist attack on our city cannot only be referenced or only cared about on its anniversary. In order to reduce these attacks against Hispanics, one must identify the causes and reduce those causes. We can do more to reduce these right-wing terrorist attacks and the racism Hispanics experience caused by these false narratives about immigrants, caused by the racist rhetoric used by mainstream conservative information sources. And by speaking out against racism and white supremacist narratives that have become mainstream, like that's a common sense way of reducing these attacks. You can't reduce these horrors by ignoring their causes. Again, like, you have to acknowledge the causes and reduce them to reduce these right-wing terrorist attacks. The attack on our city and our Hispanic community here made me feel I could have done more to speak out against this racism against Hispanics that has become normalized by mainstream conservative media. And we could all do more to speak out against white supremacy. It isn't a joke. It's a serious problem. Like a week ago, one of your regular racist callers promoted some misinformation about Patrick Cruz's motivations for targeting and killing Hispanics in our city. Like, you can't reduce these right-wing terrorist attacks against Hispanics if you don't acknowledge their causes. He said the Great Reset was a motivating factor. That is false. It was the Great Replacement theory, which is a white supremacist narrative that has become a mainstream conservative belief due to Republican politicians and mainstream right-wing media promoting it. This belief that Democrats and Biden are purposely letting Hispanics into the country to replace the white race or the white vote. This narrative causes Hispanics in general to be treated less than, to be treated negatively, to be targets of right-wing terrorism. And you'll hear Republican leaders like Greg Abbott promote this white supremacist narrative and rhetoric for votes. Like, after this attack on our city, it took only one day for right-wing media and Trump to going back to dehumanizing Hispanics and immigrants. It was like this right-wing terrorist attack on us never happened. This white supremacist narrative has become mainstream. And, this is why you see this white supremacist narrative even promoted by Hispanics, which is wild. And I speak out against this false white supremacist narrative often in the comments of your Facebook page whenever I see this view expressed by your followers, because I know it causes animosity towards Hispanics and terrorism against Hispanics and even Jewish people, like that Pittsburgh synagogue right-wing terrorist attack. That the guy, that perpetrator was just sentenced to death. He believed Jewish people were causing importing Hispanics into the country to replace the white race. Like we could definitely do a lot more to reduce these false narratives that cause racism in these attacks.
I will fully agree with you. White supremacy, there is no justification for it. There is no, there's some aspect to it. No, anyone saying that and using that as justification for just about anything, there's nothing I can think of top of my head in any case about why that would be a justification for anything, be it public, private, etc. And the idea that any group, based on the inherent characteristics of that group, is inherently less or not worthy of existing. There's a few things that I have explicitly stated that is not up for discussion on this program, because as it comes with most politics, there are going to be differing opinions, differing views, even strongly held ones. But the ability of someone to continue to exist is not one of those, because people may think like, well, I'm just arguing a point here. But if you're denying someone's ability to continue to exist or making that up for question, that is not something that is questionable, or to make it more perfectly clear, not one that is going to be entertained on this program. Because once you start getting into that, I mean, there are a bunch of lines start coming to mind there about absurdities and atrocities. But point is that if you're saying that, well, I don't know about this, there's a lot of rhetoric out there that comes to this. And I do think that there are a number of politicians, frankly, playing with fire. Whether or not they'll ever be held culpable outside of the ballot box on that is the ability to do so is a separate question, and one that, frankly, I don't know if will be answered within anyone's particular lifetime. It's been technically in existence ever since rhetoric was a concept, and particularly in the modern sphere when any idea can be blasted everywhere. There are also questions about pipelines, about how people move down certain things. But let's make this perfectly clear. Anyone saying that someone has no right to exist or should not be allowed to continue to do so, I mean, they've seen this over centuries, millennia, and even particularly in the last century, on the idea of we have no issue with them, except we just no longer want them to be here. I am severely paraphrasing because I don't actually want to continue to quote the people who said those kind of things. But let's just say they were major opponents of the United States within some of those wars happening in the previous century. And the fact that that ideology in any way, shape, or form still exists, still is around here, is one of the great shames of this century and for modernity. So this is not to say that there are not therefore reasonable things that people could think to when it comes to dealing with things. But unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that isn't said outright, things that are said couched in language and said in ways that is meant to obfuscate. I mean, dog whistles are definitely a thing and end up getting put out there. And there may be ideas out there that have bases within just incredibly decrepit and undefendable ideologies, but that have been molded in such a way as to try to make it more appealing and more able to others there. And that is why thinking about the actual policy, that's about the only way I can still think of being able to get through and deal with any of these issues in life. Because if we try to pick apart all of it, I mean, technically, there is a justification that going into the idea of lowering taxes may come from the idea that there should not be services provided to minorities. Now, does that mean that anyone who has the idea that, well, I don't like paying taxes is therefore inherently or inexorably, therefore prejudiced, racist, insert ist here, that would make them a bad person? The simple answer is no. But if we do not look at the impact of policies and talk about what we are implementing in them, whatever the espoused idea behind them is, whatever we need to do this because of X, we're not looking at the actual impacts and if it's actually achieving that goal or not. We then, by doing so, we can remove some of those impetuses, right? Some of those, we're just trying to hide it within there as an innocuous sounding policy that'll really end up serving this larger goal. And I'll admit that does lead to a little bit of conspiratorial thinking of what is truly the idea behind it? And that ends up being its own circular bit of logic. But if you really want to get down to it, looking at what is actually being espoused, what is being put forth as the way to go about achieving whatever goal that it is about the only reasonable way I can think to get through with this. Because if you are saying that, there's no reason that this can be justified, you're ending up, and this is where you and I primarily differ and continue to do so, the idea that, these people are bad and therefore nothing they can be justified. When you talk about even mainstream Republicans with this, I mean, there are definitely people out there who have made their bones and made a lot of fundraising on this, and them and I continue to have disagreements. But when you group it all together like that, not exactly trying to do a not all Republicans things, but if you're trying to educate anyone out there by painting with this broad brush, you are not doing yourself or your rhetorical points any favors, I do have to say. Because if you truly want people to oppose this kind of thing, to say, no, this is bad, if you're not giving them a way to do so without having to, if it ends up becoming more about capitulation than it is about finding common ground, I do not find that to be a useful point. Because if it's all about, you have to agree with me, my way or the highway, there's several reasons we do what we do on this program. And I probably indulged this comment for a little bit longer than I should have when it came to the source of what I'm responding to right now. But it's really not that hard to say white supremacy is bad. As Buddy Bias is saying, white supremacy is bad. Anyone saying that someone is lesser because of their race, sex, gender, religion, whatever, is definitely bad. Like that, there's no justification for that, but anyone trying to couch it as such does not have a lot. But also trying to then say, and anyone who might even mildly agree with them, at least in the implementation of the idea, even if they don't understand what the full idea is therefore having no justification to exist, is not the line. I gotta say, we have to take that next break right now. So I appreciate the point in the call for what it's worth. And I'll leave that to the individual decision on its worth, indeed. So we're going to go and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, tell you what coming up for you on the program, as we are, of course, on the cusp of Free for All Friday. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic slow in a couple of spots on the I-10 eastbound from Vinton down to Thorne. It's a 10-minute delay with those lane restrictions. And then through downtown, I-10 eastbound Dallas to Hawkins, 10-minute delays. That's residual leftover from that accident that's just cleared. I-10 eastbound at Piedras, all lanes are back open there. And in the lower valley, southbound on the loop at the I-10 gateway, the right interchange ramp is blocked due to a crash. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
In this week's Marketers Report, We learn about the value of local influencers in uncertain times from Allison Griffin, head of marketing at State Farm.
The economy is tough for everyone, and taking a step back and understanding the pain that your customers are currently going through because of a tough environment is really important. We have 19,000 agents across the country, and they understand what's going on in those very unique communities. iHeart has such a broad broadcast reach that is local, connected, and for us to be able to touch customers with a local feel but at a national scale is so efficient and important for us.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to all, from national to local. Every audience, live conversations, trusted influencers, and the insights and data you need to grow. Not just a media company, iHeartMedia is your access company. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
Ask Sherwin-Williams during the Shades of Summer sale, July 28th through August 7th, and get 35% off paints and stains with prices starting at $28.92. That means 35% off our most popular color family, blue. Psychologists have found it to be soothing and relaxing, which makes it especially great for bedrooms and bathrooms. And of course, get 35% off all of our other colors. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Your home is the place where you know your loved ones are secure. But the things that keep your home protected can't keep pests at bay. That's where RAID comes in. For 60 years, RAID scientists have worked to protect people around the world with trusted research, ingredients, testing standards, and product efficacy. RAID seeks to create a better future for all, especially the ones you love most. RAID, protection for all.
Did you know that only 2 in 10 El Paso County students graduate with a bachelor's degree? By supporting Border Youth Athletic Association's mission of educational attainment, you will create a long-lasting impact in our students' lives. Your monthly donation enables 4th through 12th grade students access to after-school programs, providing a safe and healthy environment. BYAA engages and empowers El Paso's future through mentorship and leadership development. We believe every player who gets an education wins. Do you? Go to borderyouth.org and show your support for our youth today.
If you take care of your feet will take care of you. See how we can help at the Good Feet store.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Talked about a lot of things here today, and I've told you the way I would have wanted it to go, but that's what we are here for, and we continue doing every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So just a couple reminders, again, for anyone having any level of difficulty or just wanting to talk, again, the August 3rd counseling services, that phone number for that is 915-301-2825. 915-301-2825. Or again, the Emergence Health Network Crisis Hotline at 915-779-1800. Again, that's 915-779-1800. We are, of course, on the cusp of Friday, and which all of the things that often come up, we will certainly get to and talk further about. But in the meantime, I do want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show, and talk about the things going on and certainly affecting us here in the borderland. We will do it again tomorrow, as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So until then, until next time, I want to again wish you all a good one. I want you all to stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a safe and, well, hug your loved ones closer this evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic slow in a couple of spots on the I-10 eastbound from Vinton down to Thorne. It's a 10-minute delay with those lane restrictions. And then through downtown, I-10 eastbound Dallas to Hawkins, 10-minute delays. That's residual leftover from that accident that's just cleared. I-10 eastbound at Piedras, all lanes are back open there. And in the lower valley, southbound on the loop at the I-10 gateway, the right interchange ramp is blocked due to a crash. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
If you're suffering and there's a safe, natural, easy-to-use solution to help make you feel better, wouldn't you at least want to try it? That's why millions of people use Navage Nasal Care to help relieve their symptoms of sinus congestion, allergies, snoring, and other nasal-related problems. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage to make cleaning your nose easy. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, helping flush out everything that makes you miserable. Nearly 4 million people use Navage to breathe better, snore less, and feel healthier. People like Dee, a verified Navage user who writes, "From years of having a permanently stuffed up nose to being able to breathe is life-changing. Food tastes better, and I no longer go through boxes of tissue a day," unquote. Navage is the safe, drug-free solution you've been looking for. Available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Target, and Navage.com. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Being aware of the world around you is important.
When it comes to news, yes, I am.
So we're feeding your need to know 24/7 at the top and bottom of the hour.
I like to know what's going on in my locality, abroad.
Events